Me and my two business partners, we founded Adboom in 2011. And that was, as you said, a digital marketing platform. But also on top of that, we built our own e-commerce products. Really the brainchild of Midigator was we had a pain in our business that we wanted to solve. And we didn't realize that, we knew, but we didn't realize that this could be a scalable business until effectively people were knocking on our doors. The vision with Midigator was to exit. It was a bit unusual because it was Equifax knocking on our door. And they did that through a company that they acquired called Count. I had been an investor of a lot of groups like Pine Peak. The private debt and credit space always excited me. If you're properly collateralized, your investment's never going to go to zero. Downside protection really speaks to me. As you get older, things change, your appetite changes, right? I'm more in that wealth preservation book. People in their young 20s should be trying to chase that wealth creation book. It's not that I disliked the groups that I was working with. I just felt that I could do it better. I want our investors to see what I'm seeing. I want to be transparent. I want to tell them the good, the bad, the neutral. We do a really good job, in my opinion, on the reporting, the going granular into the reporting, the consistency of the reporting. The reason why I started Pine Peak was just because I really felt that there was room for a lot of improvement on the investor side. Pine Peak is going to be my legacy business. What I mean by that is it's something for me to leave to my children. One of the things that my dad always taught me was you have to take these risks when you're young. If you're an entrepreneur, you need to be a risk taker, but you need to be anxious. You always have to have doubt. I literally had to re-engineer my brain to start to do the things that I didn't really enjoy doing or I didn't see myself doing because it's for the success of the business, right? Number one, I would tell them, make sure you have a product offering that people really want.
This is the Business Philosopher Within You podcast. I'm your host, Bhavesh Naik. A theme I've often wanted to explore on this podcast is what it's like to transition from entrepreneurship to investing. To shed some light on the process of such a transition, I've invited a very special guest to join us. Beau Hale is the founder and managing partner at Pine Peak Partners, or 3P, an asset manager focused on private credit and preferred equity investments in the lower and middle markets. Beau has a proven track record of staying one step ahead of ever-changing industry shifts and creating companies before the need for them is even known. Before 3P, he co-founded Midigator, a pioneering chargeback and credit card dispute management platform, which was acquired by Equifax in 2022. He also co-founded Adboom Group, a digital marketing agency that ranked number 3 on Forbes' list of America's most promising companies in 2015. Beau's mission today is to invest capital in innovative, trustworthy, and like-minded individuals, both established or otherwise, that are often misunderstood by traditional lenders and investors. I'm pleased to have you on this podcast.
Yes, thanks for having me, Bhavesh. Appreciate it.
Take me back, if you will, to the time when I think the Adboom Group, and so the transition time between the Adboom Group and Midigator. So what was it that inspired you to start Midigator? And I think you were co-founder with Midigator.
Right. Yeah, it's a good question. So me and my two business partners, we founded Adboom in 2011. And that was, as you said, a digital marketing platform. But also on top of that, we built our own e-commerce products. This was in the early days of Facebook going IPO, right? And really them focused on their user base and not so much focused on the advertising and building that advertising platform. And their IPO got hit pretty hard because they couldn't prove that they can monetize mobile, right? And that was a huge flip, which is why their IPO tanked. I wish I put everything I had, all my money into it when that happened, because they certainly turned around. You can't bet against that, right? But so
you said you had put everything you had into
Facebook stock. I wish I did. I didn't. I wish.
Okay, you wish. Okay, yeah, you wish you had invested in Facebook at the time.
I did, and I still do. But I wish I would have dumped everything in there on that. To the IPO kind of failure. But this was back when Facebook really didn't make it easy for their advertisers, and even Google. Google was farther along, of course, because they're more established. But
Right.
you couldn't really do things today, or do things that you can in Facebook, where they basically hold your hand through the optimization process and push pixels and things like that, really honing in on the audience. And so we built a lot of tools for ourselves that would be irrelevant today, just because now you can do so many of these things in Facebook that allowed us to really have visibility in the campaigns and optimize it back into Facebook, talk to Facebook to sometimes do it in an automated way, sometimes do it in a manual way. But then we started. We were advertising products for a lot of e-commerce brands, and at that time we were saying, well, we should make a go at this, and build some of our own e-commerce brands. Some of that, that grew to be obviously did a ton in the US, UK, France, in South Africa, France, but Germany, all over Europe, right? And so, but what became a problem was this issue called chargebacks. And chargebacks are basically when a consumer will say, I didn't pay for this product, or the product didn't arrive on time, or the product was damaged, or if it's a subscription product, sometimes they're saying, well, I didn't know it was a subscription and things like that. Things that like even Facebook and Hulu and a lot of these groups have to deal with, right? And now there's so many subscription companies out there, right? But so the chargeback problem was, it was limiting our scale. It wasn't allowing us to scale our business, because you have to keep your merchant accounts healthy, right? You have to maintain the threshold between your actual transactions and disputed transactions. So we kind of canvassed the market and tried to find a provider for that. They existed, but all of these providers were they're outsourcing this to the Philippines, or really cheap labor. The problem is the response time to the chargebacks was really delayed. The win ratios to these were really low. So, it was really the brainchild of my business partner, Corey, who was like, we should just do this ourselves. Let's just build our own tool. Right? And that was in 2014 where we built, it wasn't really called Midigator at the time. It was just our chargeback tool. Then what happened was a lot of our friendly competitors, that we share information with, colleagues, they would say, what are you guys doing for this chargeback problem? Like, well, we didn't use this provider, use that provider. But really, we ended up landing on building our own tool. And so, and these, colleagues said, well, can we use it? Right. And we didn't really think about that, licensing it out. Okay, well, maybe this could be another business line for us. And so in 2014, we officially, kind of created the brand of Midigator, and then started bringing on some of these guys that we knew. Those guys started, telling other friends, then started getting some of these bigger brands coming on. And, so these two businesses, Adboom and Midigator, overlapped, right? Because Adboom was still around and still growing until, 2018, we effectively, sold it to a competitor. And then Midigator, continued to grow, and that became our main focus, because we just saw the potential there. And as you mentioned, we sold Midigator to Equifax in August of 2022. So really the brainchild of Midigator was, we had a pain in our business that we wanted to solve. And we didn't realize that, we knew, but we didn't realize that this could be a scalable business until effectively people were knocking on our doors.
You sold to Equifax, you said in 2022, you said, right? 22. Yeah. So that was, I'm assuming that was a great thing for you guys, that the exit was something that you really wanted. Was it that came out of blue, or how did that happen?
It is something that we wanted. It wasn't, it was a bit unusual because it was Equifax knocking on our door. And they did that through a company that they acquired called Count, that was a front-end fraud solution, and we were more back end. So they're pre-transaction. Count was pre-transaction with post-transaction. Count basically said, hey, you just bought us, but if you want to take this to the next level, you should pair us with Midigator, become this powerhouse pre and post-transaction tool, right? Which didn't really exist. Before it was let the pre-transaction guys stay on their side of the fence, and post-transaction guys stay on their side of the fence, and like co-mingle. And in fact, we would be kind of resellers of each other's products. And so The CEO of Count, who was then acquired by Equifax, said, "Hey, I think you should talk to the Mitigator guys." And that effectively is what started Ball, and then you hire an investment banker and things like that. But also we had a PE round in 2018 with a firm called LLR that bought a stake in our business, and they obviously were, because they're private equity, they're itching to make their exit, get the return. So it's like we're having those conversations, but we didn't really effectively go blanket the marketplace just because Equifax is there. We did kind of put other feelers out because we wanted to make sure the price was appropriate, and the price kept coming back in line with what Equifax was proposing.
Excellent. So PE, so I think private equity, so you already had some experience with investors being on the other end. So you had a private equity investor who had invested in your company. And then you had to navigate through this idea of them cashing out along with you as you sell the company, right? So, and that's important because I want to kind of talk about a little bit about how I always think that an entrepreneurial mindset is a little bit different than an investor mindset, right? So, and I'm sure you probably have some thoughts on this. The similar question to the first one that I had asked, what was it that, so here you are, you exited, and you this is the quote unquote the end of the one company. What was the thought process that led you to thinking, hey, I don't want to, I've seen 3X founders and 4X and 5X founders. Now, Pine Peak Partners is a venture, and it's a startup venture, and it is you're building a company just like any other companies. However, it's a little bit different because your focus now is investing, right? And so what was it that led you to think that, hey, we want to be investors in other people's ventures rather than being a venture ourselves?
Yeah, so, the genesis of Pine Peak is really because of that exit with Equifax. I'm only 38 years old, right? I'm about 78 years old. I got something else, and I because it's starting companies and building things up on teams. That's really kind of what I thrive off of and I enjoy. So when that process was happening with the sale of Midigator, inevitably you're like, I don't know if this deal is going to go through or not, right? But then you go through these thought experiments. So, okay, if it doesn't, then you continue to do what you're doing, right? And continue to run a good company. Right. If it does, what's next, right? And so I had been an investor of a lot of groups like Pine Peak over the course of over a decade, and really, if I was to look at the performance or just my excitement level of all my various different investments, whether it's private equity or it's just straight real estate or private debt or private credit, the private debt and credit space always excited me, really for two reasons. Your return is your return, or you're not going to get this 10x return. You're really shooting for those kind of mid-teen returns, maybe low-teen returns, and then the income part of that, where it's showing up in your account every single month, right? The interest payments are showing up every single month. But even more than anything else, it was the protection component of it, right? Because really, if you're properly collateralized, your investment's never going to go to zero, right? Because something goes wrong and the investment goes out, then you can take over the asset. It's not something that anyone ever hopes, right? But that downside protection really speaks to me because, and I think it's because of the investing I did in my earlier 20s that, I was just kind of doing these, kind of trying to shoot for the stars, home run sort of deals. And I did have investments go to zero, and quite a few, and it's just, I think part of being young, being excited, not understanding asset allocation. So my investment strategy became more conservative, and it just spoke to me more, right? And the other thing is, as you get older, things change, your appetite changes, right? I'm more in that wealth preservation bucket, whereas I think people in their young 20s should be trying to chase that wealth creation bucket, right? And so this just has spoken to me, over time. And I thought, it's not that I disliked the groups that I was working with. I just felt that I could do it better.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I felt that there was a lack of transparency into what my money was doing. I felt there was either no reporting at all, or the reporting was subpar. So I really felt that, I want our investors to see what I'm seeing, right? I want to be transparent. I want to tell them the good, the bad, the neutral. Right? In my opinion, the bad news is way more important to deliver than the good news, right?
Absolutely.
There's a lot of decision making that happens when something's not going right. So we do a really good job, in my opinion, on the reporting, going granular into the reporting, the consistency of the reporting, and then we try to cater to the investor type where, like my dad, for example, we send our reports, he's like, this is like Latin to me. Right? He has no idea what it said. My dad's 77 years old, right? And so you cater the reporting for guys like my dad that want to see just the basics, the high level, what is happening. Sure. You don't need to have all these charts and graphs and like, show me all this stuff, right? But then there's people that, or institutions that really want to see that. They need to see that. It's important, right? And then there's people that want to see reporting on a monthly basis. Some people want it on a quarterly, right? So just kind of having that, that menu of options. But the one thing's for sure, in my opinion, you can't over-report. So if you start to over-report and people want you to scale that back, then do that, right? But I guess just going to your original question, was the reason why I started Pine Peak was just because this has been my favorite investment class. And I really felt that there was room for a lot of improvement on the investor side. And then also with the arena that we play in, which we may or may not get into, right? It's really underserved. There's not a lot of options like us for the kind of arena or the space that we're playing in. I'm happy to get into that, but I don't want to, overstop them all.
Sure. Yeah. And I think we'll get into a little bit because I think it's important to chart the journey of an entrepreneur to an investor and what that entails. And I think that I'm sure that we have audience listening or watching who would be in a similar boat. They're building a company and they're thinking, hey, what's my exit? And if I exit, just like you went through that thought process, if I exit, what do I do next? If I ever do exit, or do I, if I other option is to keep building the company, but at the same time, you may be thinking about exiting. So this is something that I'm sure that a lot of people can identify with. So it's a good conversation to get into. Some of the terms that you're using, just to kind of, for a guy like me to understand, and I'm sure that we have people in the audience who also want to understand these terms. You said private credit was one term you used, and then the other one, was it private equity
or just debt? Debt puts.
So debt, right? So debt is basically what it looks like. So you let someone borrow money at an interest rate.
Right.
It's just straight up bank, right?
In that scenario.
You're a bank in that scenario, right? And if you're a private equity investor, you like either a venture capitalist or something like that, or an angel investor or someone like that who would write a check and then hope for that money that you put in to multiply, and then you have a cash out event, hopefully somewhere down the horizon, somewhere down the line. So,
no, go ahead. Sorry, you finish your thought. I didn't know if you were done yet.
So no, I just wanted to understand that. So you mostly do with Pine Peak Partners. You do mostly debt, or do you also do some?
Yes, we're mainly debt. We're primarily focused on debt at the moment. So, and to be more, it's funny you're bringing this up because I actually just had a conversation bringing up my dad, where he's just like, you have to be like more singular in what it is that you're saying, right? And like the why that you're doing it, just because this is debt and private credit and private equity. These are very broad terms, right? And the best way to think about us and where our focus is now, and I'm happy to get into where the vision is down the road, but we really focus on bridge debt. So that is it's basically when you have someone who in most cases, they can't get a traditional bank, right? It could be because the asset, they're just acquiring an asset. Let's say, like for example, we're closing on an opportunity this week out of Chicago where it's an industrial building and it's completely vacant. So it has a negative NOI, right? Because it's a distressed property. And so, but there's no way a bank's going to touch that, right? So because it has no NOI, it's can't service the debt, negative NOI, right? They can, and in this case, these sponsors are through their other projects, but it's too hairy for banks, right? So you come into a bridge lender like us, and the terms are always going to be much shorter because our terms are usually a year to 2 years, right? Because they don't need more than that to eventually prove out their business plan so that then a bank can step in and take us out, right? So we're at the core of what PinePeak does. We are a bridge lender. I don't want to confuse the conversation, but we have done preferred equity transactions in the past. We're really not doing that anymore, but really the hyper focus is on the bridge side.
Sure. And your focus right now is mostly on real estate types of transactions?
Yes, solely real estate. Yeah.
And it's commercial.
It's commercial. We would be willing to do residential, but we just don't see a lot of that. So all of our transactions have been commercial at the moment. But yeah, it's 100% real estate focus, whether it's commercial or residential. But we just we don't see a lot of residential. We don't have it.
You mentioned vision and the why. Why is an important question too. So the vision you had when you started Midigator, so I'm getting into this because I think it's kind of important for folks who are thinking of starting a business and then also thinking of transitioning as to how you start. Do you start with a vision or you don't? So the question I have for you is when you started Midigator, what was the vision that you had at the time in terms of whether or not you had some kind of an exit idea at the time or you wanted to just keep it growing?
Yeah, the vision with Midigator was to exit because it really was a software and technology that didn't exist in that space. So we were first movers really, and then a lot of other people started coming in and trying to do it. Some were successful, some weren't, right? But the sale of the business really was the vision and we didn't really know. We didn't really have like a time, in mind. It was really just, build up this technology, make it comprehensive, give as many integrations as we possibly can. The process with CRMs, the shipping companies, all these kinds of things, so that eventually we could get a good multiple on it. The vision for PinePeak. If you want me to get into that, I don't know if you want to.
Please do. Yes, that was my next question. Okay, so sure.
It's funny because I always tell people that PinePeak is going to be my legacy business, and what I mean by that is not I'm going to be of necessarily like a Blackstone or any of these things where you have all this notoriety. Right. What I mean by that is it's something for me to leave to my children. And I have 2 boys right now.
Yes.
One is 4 years old, one's 5 years old. I have no idea if they're going to have any interest in it, right? One of them might, want to pursue music. The other one might want to pursue science, and they just might not want to be involved. Right. But it's always just been, a dream of mine to have something that I could, not necessarily, hand over and say, hey, this is yours. Right? You have to earn it, but something we could work on together.
Right.
And so, that's the big picture vision of the why that I'm doing it. But my kind of talking about the business, the vision of the business, I've always wanted to have a PinePeak lending division, which is what we have now. And then I wanted to have a PinePeak equity division, which is more the private equity stake where you're the GP on the projects and you're effectively steering the ship or flying the plane. When you're on the lending side, you're just a passenger, right? You just hope things don't go wrong, and you get paid and you gotta get taken out, get your principal paid back. And so, I know that it may sound like that's distracting, like why would you want to do both? But the main reason that I want to do both is just because if you're just doing debt, then you're only appealing to one audience, right? Or if you're just doing equity,
Sure.
you're only appealing to one audience. But if you're doing both sides of the fence there, then you effectively have a menu for people to get involved in. And they might want to do both. One might want the other. I particularly love both sides of those, right? I love the lending side, I love the business side. And I also own multifamily assets, right? So I was raised around multifamily assets. My dad owned a handful, and he would take me to properties and go over some of the maintenance stuff. And so it really speaks to me in that. So that's where I'd like to take this, because the other thing is we in order for us to grow, we have to raise money. That's the one way we build our investor base. And one of the things I guess I forgot to mention is in each of our transactions, 50% of the capital in them is my own. So I have the most skin in the game. So if something goes wrong, I'm the one who's hurting the most, right? Well, the thing is I'm not a billionaire, so I can't keep putting 50% into every single deal. Eventually become $1 billion company, right? You have to grow. You have to create excitement around the community, the real estate community, or otherwise.
So you're going to get to a point where you can keep putting 50% in, and then you're going to have to raise capital from other sources, and then your own share goes down as that happens. And you mentioned, something that you mentioned that is just kind of caught me by surprise, which is the word legacy. And legacy is something we talk about a lot on this podcast, because building a self-sustaining organization, building a self-sustaining company that outlives us. We leave something behind, and that may or may not have our own children, but it's a good. We may not do it for our own children, but if we do have the children, then that's a good emotional anchor to say, well, this is, it's like a lighthouse, right? This is what I'm shooting for. They may or may not get involved, like Warren Buffett's children, right? They may or may not be in the business, but it still is a good way to kind of think about what the legacy would be. Or it could, so legacy could be some other folks who benefit from it in some way, shape or form. And then you also talked about your father and your dad. He's also an investor. So the question that I have for you is, what are some of the values that you learned from your dad? I'm extremely impressed with what you've done in 38 years of life. You build a couple of companies, and you invested from very early age, and here you are, you're investing successfully. You've exited and you have your own capital that you're putting into your investments. So you must have done something right. What are some of the values, if you can think of one or two or three things that your dad passed on to you that you think was important for you to come this far?
Yeah.
And being as successful as you are.
Well, I appreciate all those kind words. I mean, if we count the amount of failures I've had, they're way more than my successes. And this kind of
batting average
plays into your question, right? Because one of the things that my dad always taught me, or coached me, is, look, you have to take these risks when you're young. Don't make sure they're calculated. Make sure you're educated on these risks. I mean, I talked about some of those investments that went to zero, right? And I didn't, I didn't run those by my dad. I thought I knew everything. It was just kind of, sorry, just crossing my fingers, hope it worked out, right? And also with some of the business ventures that me and my two business partners did, I mean, complete flops, and just didn't really do a lot of our research, diligence, feasibility analysis, to make sure it's worthwhile. But he definitely was telling me to take a lot of, or coach me to take a lot of risks. And actually, he's close to one of the partners on my team who is 30 years old. And it's funny because I hear these conversations. His name's Ryan. I hear these conversations he's having with Ryan, where it's sort of like he's having the same conversation, like take those risks. But then he's talking to me, and it's almost like now he's saying, you need to be more conservative. Like you can't take those risks, right? It's because I'm hitting a different phase of life. Like I have two kids, there's just a lot, more on the table than it was when I was 27, 26, whatever. So, but it's always been with him like a really good blend of risk and conservative planning, right? So another example is, when I first, started doing well and making money, one of the first things I did was I started buying life insurance policies, right? And it's when I was 27 years old. I mean, this, when Adboom was doing like 100 million a year or something in 2013. And it's, I just dumped money into life insurance policies. And I didn't have a wife, I didn't have kids, but it was sort of the prospect of that I was like, okay, it's never going to be cheaper than it is now, right? Because I'm at my helpless point. Right. And once this is locked up, it's locked up. I mean, there's cash value that's created, things like that. But I've never heard of another 27-year-old just buying up life insurance policies left and right, especially with no family, because you're like, I'm gonna live forever. Nothing's ever gonna happen to me, and I'll get it figured out when the time comes. Of my legacy, but though he encouraged me to do that, and the product itself and the reason behind it really spoke to me, and I'm so glad I did that because I just they're all paid off. Right? I paid them all on the front end, and it's not something I have to think about anymore. Just kind of so it's sort of that, hey, take risks, but on the planning side, be very conservative with what you're doing for the future. So we've got good mix.
Yeah, I'll tell you, you're lucky to have a father like that who's guiding you, and it's not just one size fit all kind of an advice. He's advising people based on where they are in the stage of life and where they are on their life journey, basically. So, if there was something that you would pass on to your children, would that be something along the similar line of what your father has taught you, or would it be something a little bit additional or something a little bit different?
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely going to have that same messaging to them, but I have basically made it. But to add on to some of the things that my dad had done to me, kind of the family policy, and they're so young to even really understand what this means, but I always tell them, and it's the kind of thesis, or belief system that Hales don't burn a bridge, right? Like Hales, never burn a bridge. And, that's coming from experience that I've had where, frankly, I have burned bridges. I've lost friends because of that. And it's just, you never really know what the impact of that is going to be on you emotionally if you end up building a bridge.
Sure.
But when you're going to need that relationship, and it could be on a personal level, it could be on a professional level. And I think it's so important to, I'm always just, especially when I was younger, I was always just kind of just bulldozing into the future and not really, I think, putting an importance on those relationships that matter then and could matter in the future, and it's, when some of these friendships that I burned the bridge on, I mean, it still affects me to this day. I mean, some of these were, 10 years ago, and it still affects me when I think about it, right? And so that's one thing that I'm especially as I get older, really drill into their head. Another thing is, and this is, coming from my partnership with Eric and Corey, I mean, just test things, right? You have to test, test and test. Right. And so, an example of that in the Adboom days where, we would come up with an idea for a product. Sometimes we'd be at dinner having a beer or whatever, and we'd come up with an idea. And we'd talk about it, get really excited, and we'd just run back to the office and we'd go and we would, build a landing page for this product. And then, we would start buying ads and running traffic to it, and then, of course we weren't capturing credit cards, but, they would, when they put in their credit card information, it would hit, sorry, out of stock, we'll contact you in stock. But we would always do this because we wanted to see how the cost per acquisition, how much did it cost us to acquire that customer, right? And this is us building, a landing page or a website at night and running a few ads at it. So we're saying, okay, if we can get that cost here, we can probably cut that in half with a lot of optimization. Work and all that. And so that, I think so many people go and they start businesses because of this is something that I want, or I think that there's this pain point, and you really have to test it to be sure. How do you ultimately test it? You don't just talk to your family and friends. You don't just talk to your parents and get their feedback. You get the data. Right? You have to make sure that it's unbiased. Because data doesn't lie, numbers don't lie, and getting the objective data, not just from kind of a small pool of post stuff.
The journey is also important, right? You start at the place, and then you have a vision, and there is a journey in between. So when we go back to the time of Midigator, right? You started Midigator, you had a vision, and then there is the exit. So on that journey, what are some of the things that you did that you think were the right things that you did? What are some of the steps that you took, or maybe some strategies, some ideas, some innovations? What are some of the hits that you did that you think made you successful in being able to build that company?
Yeah, one of them was hiring our president, Mark Stanville. Because he was such an integral person in that community, and he really, it took a little while, but he really accelerated our business, because at that time we had our direct book of our business, right, which is just kind of bringing on direct merchants, right, and then we have a channel side, which is what Mark ultimately, that was his role, to build up that channel partnership, right? So you get, instead of trying to target direct merchants that can become clients, you go and you target these merchant processors that have thousands of clients that they can refer to, right? You're aligning with their core business, because you're saying, okay, if you give us those clients, we can bring them on, and we can help with the dispute process and keeping these merchant accounts healthy, which is keeps these merchant accounts alive. And there's just that whole channel partnership is really what just kind of hockey stick the business. And so Mark played a huge role with that. He was the president of Midigator, for sure, said that. And then another one was, when we basically became resellers of what the product is called Ethica and Verify, which were, they were alerts. And so we always did the dispute management, but this was alert platform. And so we basically resold their product, and we became, by a long shot, their biggest reseller. So, there's many examples. The people, at the end of the day, it's the people that really are the most important thing. It doesn't matter if you're a technology company or financial services, right?
Yeah.
The market is an example, but all the other, hires that we made that took so long to get that retention and really big player in that space. I could give you, 12 people's names, but it does at the end of the day really.
It does come down to people, and then that's an excellent insight. And on that topic, was there with people comes this idea of a culture, and there is culture even with 2 people company, right, or of course with 100,000 people company, but were there any elements that you can point out in terms of what kind of culture you built with Midigator?
Yeah. So it in a way it overlaps with the Adboom culture, because those two businesses running at the same time. But we try to be that really hip and cool, technology company, right? Well, and we were. We had graffiti on the walls, and cater food, and all these kinds of things, and it was a fun place to work. I think especially for those employees at the time, because we were really young, right? We're in late 20s, early 30s. And this was in San Diego, California, and we just had a really fun work environment. But the problem with that, at least for us, and I don't think Google and these big guys have a problem with this, but it limited our talent pool in 2 ways, because we had that physical location that everyone had to come in every single day. We were flexible in hours and things like that. That wasn't a big deal. But it sort of would attract maybe a little bit more of the mature crowd, just because of all the shiny objects and cool things we were doing. And again, restricting that talent pool, right? So we could only hire effectively in San Diego. So we actually went full remote. I think it was in 2016 or 17. where
Wow.
we had,
Before
yeah,
2020.
before COVID.
Yeah.
And the driver of that was because we wanted to bring on more people that were just all over the country.
Sure.
Right? So,
Right.
and we still had an office, but we started expanding our reach, and then we then found that a lot of these people that we were hiring that were working remotely were a lot more effective, and they were getting things that quicker because they didn't have a lot of those office distractions, right? And so then we allowed both at one point the San Diego employees and these folks to work remote. We would do surveys, like what do you like, what don't you like about working remotely. And it was interesting because a lot of these things that at the time, I mean, it's kind of a given now with what's happened since COVID, but people would say things like, like, I like working remote because, if I have a 10-minute break, I can go and do my laundry, right? Or if I have an hour break or my lunch break, I can go work out, right? And it just, people didn't have to worry about rushing to work or rushing to the gym before work or after work. But, just having that flexibility, I think, created a better quality of life. And another thing that we did was, we still do, is we have unlimited paid time off, right? We leave it up to our employees with how much time they want to take off. We don't do the 2 weeks a year kind of thing or 3 weeks. If you want to take it off. But you're obviously accountable to what happens before you leave and when you come back. You can't make it and that so it used to be a lot more of the we were never micromanagers, kind of time clock punchers, but we just found hiring the right people and giving them full flexibility allowed them to have a better quality of life in their personal life, which translated over to their professional life. And again, this now, like post 2020, is just the theme of everything going on. We started doing this, I think it was 2017.
And what parts of the Pine Peak Partners, are there any aspects of what you've done successfully in terms of culture, journey, ideas, strategies that you're carrying through into Pine Peak Partners or planning to as you grow and build up more of the people in 3P?
Yeah, so we're still in our infancy, right? We started in May of 23, kind of effectively opened our doors in August of 23, which is a year ago from this film out. I guess I'll talk about the future, my vision and things I want to apply with first, and then we can talk about some other things now. But definitely bringing technology to Pine Peak, I think is always at the forefront of mind in terms of things we can do to optimize our internal processes, but also things we can do for our investors and also like our network that brings us opportunities that can be utilized with technology, right? And I'm not talking about being a level 1 technology like in Amazon or Google or anything like that, right? I mean, Midigator wasn't even a level 1 technology. It's really more about sitting on other technologies that we can take that data and we can use that for our processes that are going to help our decision-making opportunities, but also we're going to really be able to display things to investors in the way they want to see, customize it, things like that. And also, really telling, on the investor side, telling them as best we can what their money is doing in real time. Right? And for us, really the underwriting side is the most important side, the risk management side. So being able to have these key inputs that we need so that we don't need to, because we don't need to have a 2-hour long meeting to talk about a specific opportunity like we do now, right? Because and then then you get the human bias with that, right? But if we have a technology tool that meets our parameters, that it basically for us, it's all comes down to liquidity, right? And you got to analyze the borrower and make sure that they're it's rock solid or as solid as can be, but it really comes down to us on the bridge set side. Okay, if this goes wrong, how quickly can you move it, right? And I haven't seen, I mean, there might be proprietary groups, with big guys, but I haven't seen anything that really does a good job of really breaking down liquidity or giving you like a good result. And I think, I don't know why it's not talked about more, frankly, because, and I'm an investor of Blackstone, and I never really hear this. I think that is your downside protection. So right now we do all of this stuff kind of on the sell. completely on Excel, right? And pull it from other data sources. But being able to do that in as much of a real time, basis is where my head's at. And then, it's funny because so that's sort of, answering your other question, what are some of the things that we're doing today? What I just answered about the future is really kind of more mitigator background, mitigator philosophy, right? And kind of what's been going on
Sure.
now in the infancy of Pioneer is really the Adboom philosophy, right? Because
Sure.
in coming down to how we brand and market ourselves, and really
Sure.
really testing things on that front in terms of, okay, is our information too long? Is it too short? It
Right.
just I think our first fundraise we sent a 30-page deck, right? And that was a total flop because we didn't get that much interest, right? And then we changed the format, we got feedback, we're talking to people, and then emails that are going out, now we're getting fully subscribed in opportunities. Our last one was fully subscribed in 9 hours, right? And it's just because the marketing, the advertising, the messaging, we really perfected. I'm not saying we're there. I think we need to continue to build and look at the data and see what's working and not working. But at the end of the day, if you're confusing people, they're never going to invest, right?
Yeah.
I've seen decks that have been on Zoom calls and things where the sound is cool, but I have no idea what it is. There's no way I'm going to, I'm going to run it.
Sure.
And so, and then same thing with the, our networks that bring us opportunities, and really staying in front of them in the right fashion, where you're basically showing them, hey, this is what we're doing. This is the things we like. This is why we like them. This is where, our allocation is shifted from, this asset class to this asset class. So, so that we can stay top of mind for them, because everyone's busy, right? And I don't care if you're, you're, of course, I think stay-at-home moms are the busiest people in the world. But if you're a mother, you're retired, you're a full-time job, it's really condensing that information so that they can just do like this one time with their phone and got it. Just do one little slip, because you've got to be respectful of people's time. You're asking for too much of it. Participation.
Entrepreneurship is not always moonlight and roses. It looks glamorous for the people from the outside looking in, but for the person who is in there, in the driver's seat, it's not always fun times, right? So we go through some times that are difficult, and sometimes we have this kind of dark night of the soul kind of moment that we get into, where we kind of look at our business and say, my God, what have I done? And I want to walk away from this. Has that ever happened to you? I know we all have struggles. There's ups and downs. But was there ever a time when you hit the bottom?
Oh, yeah. So many times. So it's not, I can't even count. But I have had one of those recently. It was just this past, I think, like May or March or something like that. And where, it was kind of timely, because I saw this interview of Elon Musk, and he basically said what you said. Right? He said, starting companies, everyone thinks that it's this sexy thing, and everyone wants to ride this rocket ship, and you're presenting yourself like just starting this life-changing, world-changing thing, right? He said, but really, starting a new venture is like staring into the abyss, where a lot of times you have to do things that you really don't like, and then you can't work on the things that you do enjoy and the things that are the rest of the business, but you really have to jump in and fix these problems. Right? And I had that with Pine Peak, just because I really felt like we were not doing a lot of the right things, and there were so many things that weren't going right in the two pillars of our business. Which the two pillars of our business are origination, which is getting the opportunities, and the fundraising, which speaks for itself. And these two pillars, and I drew this on a whiteboard with my team, and I basically, I was like, these two pillars are broken. And I had a roof of a house, and I said, the roof of this house is about to crater, right? And if we can't fix these two things, then we're dead in the water, And of course, like during this whole time, I'm losing sleep. I'm not really working out like which I like to do on a regular basis. And it's just because I had to go in and do everything myself. Right? I'm not saying my team wasn't doing or trying to help, but it's sort of,
Right.
I had this moment where I even told my team, I said, get the F out of my way because I'm going to fix this problem
Right.
myself. Right. And
Right. Yeah.
that's the way that, look, if you are, again, I said this is my legacy business, right? So I'm saying this is my legacy. So you got to get out of my way because we're doing things my way now. Because the way that the team has been wanting to do things is not working. And so, I mean, this was, several months ago and look, I mean, some of them didn't even think that things were going wrong. They thought things were going right. But in my perspective, things were not going right because we weren't hitting these milestones that I felt that we needed to hit. Even a lot of the outsiders looking in, like my friends at the time, like, man, it seems like Pine Peak is crushing. That's the outside perspective. But the way that I felt and the way that things were going were nothing close, right? And I think that type of anxiety, if you're an entrepreneur, probably you need to be a risk taker, but you need to be anxious. Like you always have to have doubt that something is going to go wrong, right? And I have that today. It's not, oh yeah, we fixed that problem. We'll stay on now. I have it.
And on that note, what is something that you thought that you learned about yourself, either from that specific experience that you talked about or through your such moments that you didn't know that you had? The journey actually, a lot of the troubles that we have is blessing in disguise, right? That we find out things about ourselves that we didn't know that we had. If we were just retired on an island somewhere, we would never have an opportunity to find out those things about ourselves. So was there one or two things that you can share that you thought that you didn't know about yourself, but that you discovered because of such moments?
Yeah, I get there's probably two things. There's, I guess, the level of doubt that I could have in myself. In that time, it was a really, really dark time, and there's a lot of kind of therapy between the various important people in my life at that time. So there's a lot of doubt. And I thought, now that I'm getting older, I was, I didn't think I had much doubt. I'm pretty confident, but it was extreme doubt, right? And I was taking a lot of things, personally. But one of the things that that I guess that I thought maybe I had lost was the ability to really trick my mind into believing things for the benefit of the progress of the business. And so I'll give you, an example. I mean, when my first job out of college, I did commercial insurance, and basically I was a broker, right? And so I had to just hit the phones every single day.
Right.
And I've made 100 calls a day. And people would, kind of, especially the older, more seasoned producers would, come by and, Jesus, kid is just like cranking. And at the time, I tricked my brain into loving cold calling. And that's what I'd say. I love it. And inevitably, what happened was I in that year or 2 years, I was like the highest producer. Both years I maybe tied for 1 year, but it was like I'm this little young kid out of college. But it's literally training my mind to love cold calling for the end result, which was to get be a successful producer. And so in this time with the Pine Peak venture too, I mean, I had to do that. Like I literally had to re-engineer my brain to start to do the things that I didn't really enjoy doing or I didn't see myself doing because it's for the success of the business, right? And so I thought, that was a little surprising to me this time because I was like, okay, do I still have it in me to go pound pavement, beat down doors, have 1,000 phone calls pitching, Pine Peak, because that was really what I didn't see myself doing. I saw myself progressing the business, but I tricked my mind, and that was surprising. That I think it's still there, even though I'm much older now. But
surprise, and here you are. Mind is a wonderful thing, and sometimes it plays tricks on you, right? Someone has exited a company. Someone has built a company, and then they're about to has exited a company. They're thinking, hey, do I start a new company or do I want to go into investing? if someone like that came to you and said, Beau, what should I do? What's your best piece of advice? You made this transition from being a business builder, twice business builder, to an investor. What is one or two things that you would tell them to be careful about?
Yeah,
two pieces of advice.
Number one, I would tell them, make sure you have a product offering that people really want and believe in. Sorry, were you saying something?
No, I was going to say that right there, what you just said, that is so important. We miss that. The product offering that someone wants.
Right.
Is very important. And then, you went through you had 3 companies with 3 different sets of product offerings. Mm-hmm. And every time it's different. You were just talking about setting 30-page documents. You had to start the whole process over with investing, right? It's a different ballgame. So continue, sorry.
Yeah, it's because and this goes back a little bit to the testing, right?
Right.
Just because you like something doesn't mean other people like it, right? So
exactly.
And I talked about how we've been getting away from preferred equity transactions. And really, the reason for that is not because preferred equity, because people don't like preferred equity. There's highly successful companies like us that do a lot of preferred equity. But the thing is that our current network doesn't like it. Just to give you an idea of how things have gone, on our first preferred equity transaction, we raised $275,000. On the second one, we raised $660,000. And then on our first bridge opportunity, we raised $1.2 million like that, right? And so it's literally double our second go out of preferred equity. It's 6 times what it was, And then now I mentioned we're doing more of these bridge in our network. Our network at the time, our likes. We're talking about getting them fully subscribed in a matter of hours. Right? So then you see, okay, this is working, right? And you have a product that at least our network likes. And how do I exploit that more, right? How do I put these kinds of things in front of them so that we can't put crap, right? We put these things through the ringer. We have 98% kill ratio. By nature of being a bridge lender, you're going to see a lot of stuff that just is pretty ugly, right? And so, but you got to dive in the rough. And so that's one thing. And then, kind of going back to what I was saying, about press and the failure there, it's not that the product was wrong, right? It's that we did a bad job on the education side. And that's so important that, whatever you're doing, it's going to appeal to, or it's going to be able to be digested by someone like my 7-7-year-old dad, right? Or someone who's never even heard this before. Because that was the problem. A lot of the people, hadn't heard of it before. Like, this is just, it's confusing. You're in the middle of the capital stack. Is it debt? Is it equity? Right. And so, if you testing the product offering, making sure that there's really something there, and then putting this huge emphasis on the education front, so that you are making sure this is digestible, understandable, checks all the boxes. If I sent you our first fundraising email to how our fundraising emails look now, you're talking about,
a big difference.
Yeah, you're talking about an entire novel down to like, and if people want to go deeper, then we have the options for them to go deeper, even through other materials or data room or phone calls. But getting the product right is what matters most, right? You can't guess on that. That's for sure.
Sure. And you hit on something very important. I think simplicity is difficult. In sense that people say keep it simple, right? I don't think that's a good advice, because if Steve Jobs wanted to keep iPhone simple, it would just be a piece of plastic that's a rectangle, right? But there's tremendous amount of complexity in that product. But the user experience is simple and beautiful experience, right? So, and this is the product thing, right? There could be complexity in the product, but we go through all that complexity. But then to have the final product is to the user, to the customer. It's a simple thing, and then if they want to go deeper and deeper into it, it's all available behind the scenes. But what we present to them is simple for them to understand and connect with, right? So. And you just explained the whole process so beautifully. So I love that.
Yeah, the best, and you probably put it in a simpler form, I mean, it has to be intuitive, right? That's why iPhone has completely exploded. That's why, you know, 1 and 2-year-old kids know how to use iPhones. It's that intuitive.
Exactly.
Right? And if you're going to do something, you know, like what I do in financial services, or starting something that's never been done before, you have to make it intuitive and use it for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And then the complexity in the financial service industry is just enormous.
Right.
It's an enormous amount of complexity behind the scenes. So if someone wants to get in touch with you, first of all, what is it that you would like to talk to people about? Or, you know, if you want to reach out and say, this is what I need to talk to people about. So who are you reaching out to, and how do they get in touch with you if they are the right people to connect with you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm willing to talk to anybody, right? I mean, you know, kind of where, if I'm thinking about in your audience, you know, there might be 2 different types of audiences here, right? There might be someone who is either thinking about starting a business, has started a business, you know,
sure,
it's live, it's not quite live, right? And then there's people who maybe are intrigued by the Pine Peak side of my life, where they say, okay, it's interesting, like what Beau's doing. It's, you know, the bridge debt placements that interest me. Maybe I want to be, you know, inserted into his deal flow and see if anything speaks to me now, future, whatever, right? But on the you know, more of the folks that might want to pick my brain on my path and journey and my story, you know, I'd love to talk to them, because I mean, going back to what I said, I mean, it can literally be the bits. And I only brought up the most recent example, but there's a lot. There's a lot of them over the past 15 years. And, you know, the highs are highs and the lows are, God, they're low. You know, they're so.
Yes.
Low.
Tell me about it. Yeah. Yes.
Well, yeah.
And I.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. Now, I appreciate. I so appreciate you making yourself available to people who need to reach out to you, because I think that is so important. The more we think that we are connected, I think the more we actually are disconnected, in the sense that, you know, we have all these networks and technology, but the emotional connection, face-to-face connection, that is so important. And I think that's kind of, I don't know if it's going away, but I think you know, it's kind of receding, and that's my experience. And there are studies out there that say that 70% of people don't have a single friend that they can count on. Which is pretty sad, actually. So I appreciate you making yourself available for those kinds of conversations where someone can reach out and say, hey, you know, what do I do? I'm in this kind of a transition phase. Do you have any words of advice for me? LinkedIn is a good way to get hold of you, or your website, or
LinkedIn, website. My email is Beau, BEAU, at pinepeakpartners.com. That's also lives on the website. So if you just want to go to pinepeakpartners.com, you have my email there. But any channel, LinkedIn, website, it's all good with me.
All right. Thank you very much, Beau. We'll put all that in the show notes, and we'll also summarize this. We always summarize these conversations into a readable format, so that if someone wants to kind of study the conversation and all the things that we kind of talked about and something beyond, then they can do that. So I'm going to create a show notes blog post, basically, and then I'm going to put it all there, and we'll have links to all of that from the video version of this podcast episode and from the audio version. And this was an awesome conversation. I really appreciate you taking the time to be on the podcast and sharing your story. Well,
yeah, no, this is fun, and the only way that makes it fun is with every good host. So I appreciate you having